Welcome to the OPSQC podcast, helping entrepreneurs, innovators, and small business owners scale to profitability. The goal of this podcast is to showcase real businesses, real owners, tell their stories, learn a little, and have some fun while doing it. Today's guest is Jason Pittman, the president at ExitAdvisor, which is located in the greater Chicago area. ExitAdvisor works with owner-operated businesses, roughly in the $300,000 to $10 million annual revenue range, to ensure that the transition or the sale maximizes the value of the company, as well as the chances of the business owner successfully exiting one day. Jason, thanks for taking time out of your busy schedule and joining the show.
Oh, thanks for having me. It's my pleasure.
So for the listeners, could you give a little background on ExitAdvisor?
Sure. So ExitAdvisor is a firm I started a couple of years ago. It originally started as a blog when I was a business broker. I started as a business broker in 2005 and worked for other firms. And it was something I started really as something to kind of put my thoughts out there and promote businesses for sale. And today it's a full service business brokerage, and we do valuations and exit planning.
Very cool. Very cool. So how long were you in the M&A space before you decided to create your own solopreneur business?
Well, probably at least 10 years.
Okay.
I started in 2005 working as a broker with other people, started part-time. I had my hand in a couple other ventures. When I first got started, I was interested in investment property. And so I was kind of doing a couple things. And so started in 2005 and worked probably with other brokers, learning the business, and for about 10 years before I really struck out on my own.
Okay. And as far as the name ExitAdvisor, like it's pretty straightforward, but did you play with other names? I mean, was there other things you were considering?
Yeah, that's a good question. I definitely was. The way I went about it was I just opened up a spreadsheet, started jotting down names that made sense. And I wanted something that was a little bit different from, using the word broker. I always liked advisor. And that's just kind of how it came about.
I think that fits you in your company pretty well. So when you formed a legal entity, was that something you just did on your own? You're able to do that, or did you have other resources you tapped into?
Yeah, in the beginning, it was, I didn't incorporate things. So it was just kind of a sole proprietor sort of approach. In the beginning, it was really something that was on the side where I did ad hoc work. Because most of my career, I was focused on the transaction as a broker, helping people find buyers for their businesses and things like that. Occasionally, I'd have people that wanted me to help them with due diligence or review something for them, part of the deal before they really pulled the trigger. And that's kind of where ExitAdvisor started. But once I realized I was going to do everything there full time, I incorporated myself. I did everything myself. It's very simple to incorporate.
You are one of the most self-sufficient entrepreneurs, solopreneurs I know. You actually cover a lot of different ground. We've talked in the past, and you do a lot of your own website work and things like that. So kudos to you on that. You're very adaptable.
I appreciate that. It can be a curse though too, letting go of things.
Sure. And for the listeners, I know there's going to be a lot of acronyms and different lingo because the M&A field in itself, so mergers and acquisitions, it just has its own language, right? It's a very closed group, I'd say.
Yeah, you're probably right about that, and very closed, because even on the lower end for Main Street businesses, a lot of times you won't hear it as M&A. We'll call ourselves business brokers, and a lot of times I'll talk to business owners that have run their businesses 20, 30 years. They've never even heard of a business broker.
Sure. Yeah.
So we're definitely a closed off group.
Can you give the listeners too a little bit of an idea where you play? Because M&A is a very wide space. I mean,
right.
There's multi-billion-dollar companies out there, and people kind of choose a niche, right, where they want to participate. Could you give the listeners a little guidance on where your sweet spot is?
Sure. My sweet spot, I would say, it's owner-operated companies in the Chicago area. I would say Chicago has always kind of been my specialty. Whereas some M&A firms, they might be national, but they focus only on one industry or a very specific size of business.
Sure.
Oftentimes they might be working on the security transactions. So they're selling part of the stock of the company. So that's a
Okay.
big difference between an investment banker and an M&A advisor, sometimes between a business broker.
Hmm.
Whereas a lot of what I work on, my sweet spot will be owner operated companies under 10 million in revenue.
Okay.
And they'll typically be an asset sale. So the way they're structured is different than an investment banker would structure their deals, where they're selling the stock or a security related to the company. Where the businesses I sell, typically the corporation is being dissolved, and a new corporation is buying the name and the goodwill and the assets and absorbing the business under a new entity because they don't want to take on the liability. And so there's a very different approach into how we're licensed.
Hmm.
So that's part of it. But yeah, to get back to the question, the sweet spot would be owner operated businesses under 10 million in revenue, because they kind of fit those boxes where they're going to be working with a broker instead of an investment banker most of the time. And it's going to be an asset sale versus selling off part of the company.
Can you give the listeners a little bit more of a definition of what an asset sale is, just so they can, kind of grab that and maybe have like a example or two?
Yeah, when you hear asset sale, think of it as a closing. Kind of like when you sell a house, you got to have a closing, right?
Hmm.
When you sell a business, there's going to be a closing. And think of it as there's two types of closings in a way. There's one going to be an asset sale, one's going to be a stock sale.
Okay.
One, you're literally selling the assets of the company to someone else. Stock sale, you might be selling 40% of your company in the form of stocks to someone else.
Okay.
So that's kind of the simplest way to think about it.
Yeah, assets being building, grounds, equipment, pretty much everything involved in running the business, right?
Yeah, sometimes it won't even be the building. A lot of times the real estate's not involved. Most of the time it's the goodwill of the business.
Okay.
They're buying the future streams of cash flow, really.
Sure.
If you made $100,000 in profits last year and have done that really consistently, that's what they're really buying.
Right.
They don't
Absolutely.
necessarily care about the equipment or the fixtures that you've installed, but they really want those cash flows.
Sure. That makes sense. Totally. Like I said, the language of the industry is very unique. So,
Sure.
people may want to go away from this podcast and actually do some looking up. One of the things we'll probably talk about here too is lifestyle businesses. How many business owners do you talk to that their business is what we would call a lifestyle business?
I'd say most of them.
Okay.
And if I'm thinking of the same definition, like as a lifestyle business, we're thinking of a business that really supports someone's lifestyle, and makes enough to maybe have a full-time income and then some.
Right.
But I also tend to think of lifestyle businesses as businesses that are still heavily reliant on the owner. So if
Yes.
the owner goes on vacation for a month, business slows down or stops altogether.
Correct. And that's my definition too, is, when you look at, have they built processes to have a standalone business that the owner doesn't have to be present to run,
Mhm.
versus do they have to be in the doors and actually there as a part of it running it? So,
Exactly. And the reality is most business owners are very integral to the day-to-day operation. So when they do go on vacation, things slow down. If they can go on vacation, a lot of business owners can't for that reason.
sure.
So I would say most of them probably qualify as lifestyle businesses, where the owners have done a pretty good job of building a business around themselves. But as soon as they step out, things are going to
Sure.
slow down.
So, what would you say is unique about the business you've created with ExitAdvisor? Right? What differentiates that business from other participants in that M&A space?
Right. I would say what makes me different, our firm different, is the fact that we're focusing on sellability and not just trying to go to market right away. So when
Sure.
someone contacts us, we have a pretty detailed conversation about not only what I think the number is, what's the business worth, but there's a second number that we talk about. And I use something called the value builder system to have them start with a questionnaire, and it generates a sellability score of sorts on a scale of 0 to 100. And it breaks this down into 8 categories. And I use this to kind of guide the conversation, to understand their business model, their financials, and really give them an idea of how sellable the business is. because a lot of business brokers, we've done a poor job of representing people on the front end and really educating them as to what their chances of successfully selling are, versus just saying, okay, I will try to get you that magic million number that you want, and we're just going to go to market, but sign this 12-month exclusive right to sell contract with me. And what happens is a lot of people sign up to a long-term contract that a lot of brokers don't want to let them out of. So I'd say what makes us different is we really spend a lot of time on the front end educating them. Okay, here's what your chances of selling are, and here's what I think you could work on to improve your chances. And then the other thing is, if at any time they feel like things aren't going the way they expected, they can cancel their agreement with us. Just give us 30 days notice so we can wind down our marketing and our efforts. And, we don't like to lock people in long term.
I love how you're approaching it, because you and I have talked in the past offline that small business owners tend to have some inflated views of what their business is worth. So there's a big part of just getting in the selling mindset for an owner. So setting realistic expectations. And I love the way you're approaching it, right? You're using this platform, this value builder system where you do the interviews to help, the business owners start thinking about the questions, right? Without being infringed upon or insulted, because I think that's a key thing. Is a lot of brokers come in and say, hey, they're just very direct and say, no, this is not going to work, or this is. Your system allows them to kind of come to the realization of where they should really be on their own.
Yeah, I think so. I don't want to be the one that's trying to be the expert at all the times. There's certain things I know, but no one knows the business better than the business owner. So I'd rather be in a position of asking the right questions to get them thinking about it. And every business has got some kind of hidden asset. So I think it's more about asking the right questions and getting them to really think about it in a different way, versus coming in and just telling them this is how it works and this is how it's going to be. And your business would be so much better if you did this. I don't really know that. I don't want to act like I do.
Sure. No, that's a great approach. Definitely. I see the value in it myself on this side. So let me ask you, why Chicago? Why not take your skills and look at another, fertile area?
Yeah, that's a good question. I would say if I was really looking to scale this, that would be a good approach. Chicago, just because it's my home, this is where my family is, this is where my roots are. Sure. And, my business, in a way, most of my life has just been a lifestyle business. So this is where I'm comfortable and where I know. But taking it to other markets would make the most sense in terms of scaling my own business.
Sure.
And finding, which is part of what I've done. So, for example, in certain spaces like manufacturing and technology, anything related to that, I look outside of the Chicago market. So I have some places on my radar in Milwaukee and St. Louis and Indianapolis, kind of the Midwest.
Sure.
But I'd say that's the main reason, is that there's enough in Chicago to keep me busy, more than enough.
Right. Now, looking at the actual cycle, right, the sales cycle for what you do, I mean, those are very long sales cycles. I mean, from the time you engage with a customer, getting things going, going through the process and actually realizing a paycheck, it can be a pretty long sales cycle. Did you create a formal business plan that kind of accommodates all these factors? Or when you went into it, because of your experience, the decade or so that you were in it before, that you kind of just had assumptions and kind of like an outline?
Yeah, I had a lot of, I was very comfortable with that aspect of it. That's one of the things I realized about myself very early on, was that I had a strong appetite or tolerance for going a long period of time without collecting a paycheck. I worked in corporate America for 7 years, so I knew firsthand what it was like getting that paycheck a couple times a month. But once I really struck out on my own, I realized that it wasn't part of my DNA where I looked for it. I was okay working on projects for a year or more, and before I got paid, and sometimes not getting paid. I just so I figured that out early on. So there was a lot of assumptions there, knowing that that's how this business works. Is you're going to work on projects for a long time, and sometimes they're still not going to pay out.
Did you pursue any outside funding or anything that kind of tied you over while you were developing the client base, or while you were trying to secure those first jobs and get to that first paycheck?
No, because initially I think it wasn't my sole source of income. When my entry point into business brokerage, I had a couple other things going on. I had some investment property, and I had a retail business where I had different locations at malls here in the Chicago area where I had a product line that I was selling. So I had other sources of income. I had other things going on. So when I first got started as a broker, I was working for more experienced brokers, kind of apprenticing to them and assisting
Okay.
them. So they didn't require a full-time effort from me, and I was able to do my work remotely. And it was a very easy way to learn the business
Mhm.
and still kind of keep my hand in other things without having to just jump in.
Sure. Is that pretty typical that they bring in people like that, and do more of like, what you're calling the apprenticeship, kind of like, get you groomed? Because I know that long sales cycle, time between paychecks, for some people it's disruptive and some people don't
Yeah,
deal with it as well as you do. Is that a pretty common practice for them to do that though?
I don't think so. I think it's kind of the other way around.
Okay.
What I tend to find is it's usually people that have already had some success in another career, or maybe they've sold a business,
Okay.
and so now they've got some reserves. They don't need a regular paycheck, and they need something to do. And they're a business owner. They've been through the process. They know other business owners. So a
Mhm.
lot of times you'll meet brokers that are really just part-time brokers or more finders for
Yeah.
firms where they know enough about the business to bring in deals, but they don't really do it full time.
Right.
I think that's more common.
Other people I've talked to in the industry, they tend to be older gentlemen. Like, to your point, because they don't need to rely on an income, they tend to be, more later in life. It's getting towards retirement or post-retirement. This is what they do. You're
Hmm.
pretty young to be in this space, actually.
Yeah, I'm definitely an anomaly in that sense. 'Cause when I got started, I think it was about 25, 26.
Wow.
And most brokers are definitely older, in 40s or 50s, I would say, on average. And I'm 42 now, so I'm still kind of on the young end. But I don't know, it was just timing and the way things worked.
Sure. So, I mean, you mentioned too about finding these deals and developing these deals over time, right? And in the M&A space, and there's a variety of things people do. I mean, probably the most basic level is just picking up the phone and calling people.
Hmm.
Um, is that what you do, or do you have more of a organic process?
Yeah, in the beginning, there was definitely more cold calling.
Okay.
Very little of it today, mainly because I hate cold calling.
Yeah.
But honestly, cold calling is very effective for people that are getting started. It's a good way to start getting people on your list and get some conversations going.
Hmm.
Because when you have that first conversation, chances are you might not hear anything for a couple of years, because
Sure.
really this is the big decision for people to make.
Right.
And a lot of times they'll never make it. Some people just don't want to sell their business, right? Their
Right.
plan is to keep it, maybe turn it over to junior one day, but
Hmm.
sometimes something unexpected happens. So that's why
Sure.
it's good to reach out to people, get some people on your list, and that's a good way to get started. But yeah, more organic ways is what I preferred. I don't like doing much in the way of advertising. My preferred method was really face-to-face networking.
Mhm.
Chamber groups and B2B kind of networking groups were always my preferred method. That way you can get out and meet other professionals like accountants and fractional CFOs and wealth managers, kind of other advisor to business owner roles, and meet each other face to face. You get a feel for each other, see if you like each other and things like that. That was my preferred method and
Mhm.
still is.
That's a resounding theme on this podcast, is just the power
Is
of
it?
the network, right? Building
Yeah.
building and nurturing those relationships. And it goes beyond just knowing who somebody is in your Rolodex, right?
Hmm.
And that's where I do see, from my experience with you, I see you're pretty powerful in that regard. You build those relationships. It's not like you're just looking to get the names and get them in the file. You're trying to understand who people are, and what is behind them, what the backstory is, right?
Yeah, I think that's yeah, that's true. That's something that stuck with me a while back, where someone was giving a presentation about how to network, And it
Sure.
can be very tempting. And I think this is how I started doing it the wrong way. It was just trying to go to as many events and groups as possible, as a guest, and just meeting lots and lots of people. But it's hard to follow up with lots of people,
Yeah.
and really get to know lots of people. So there's nothing wrong with, I think, attending a lot of events, especially if you have a very niche business like mine, business brokers. A lot of people don't know what business brokers are. So when I show up to an event, I'm usually an uncommon profession. So just from that perspective, it can be worth it. But really, there's more value in building a core list and getting to know those people a little better over time. So these days, I have kind of one core group that I attend regularly. But there's certain people I've met over the years that I make it a point to try to stay in touch with them.
That makes sense.
I think that's effective way to do things.
Quality, not quantity, right? It's
Right.
definitely about that when you get into business. It's funny, you jump back and forth between the term broker advisor, but I do see, from the work you and I have talked about and what you've shown is you are more of an advisor. And I know you talked about that a little bit early on, what differentiates the broker versus advisor, but I think the networking and nurturing part of the relationship definitely leans towards that advisor side.
That's true, because I think during the networking and nurturing part, that's where I'm trying to add some value before anyone's actually a client. Because the way I look at it is, if I'm at an event as a guest or as a speaker, I'm there just to give it away. I'm an open resource, so I'm happy to talk about all of it. I love to geek out about this stuff. And
you definitely
if
give
I
away
can
a lot
help
of freebies.
people get unstuck, then that's the value I can add during that kind of nurturing stage, right? And then they get a feel for me as well. If they like the cut of my jib, so to speak, then they'll want to work with me one day. Otherwise, they'll be like, I don't like that guy. I'll work with this guy.
Sure. And you do give away a lot of freebies. I mean, so the value builder system, you talk about some of these questionnaires. If somebody wanted to access that, where would they go?
They could go to my site, and on the main page, there's an ebook where you just you can put in your email address and name, and that's one of them. And then just signing up for that will open up some access to other things. And I have lists that go out and some other ebooks that I'll be promoting. And so I'm always trying to come up with some sort of content, either that I'm coming up with, or the value builder system, they come up with some content that we kind of personalize and put our own touch on. And there's a lot of good stuff out there.
Sure. No, I appreciate that. And we will post links to your website in the show notes at the
Sure.
end.
And
The
I
end of the
appreciate that.
podcast here. So, I personally know a lot of the owner operators. They can be a tough crowd, right? And you mentioned before that, if you're not the expert, you don't want to pretend you are. Do you use like a referral network, or what do you do when you have those situations where there's work that maybe doesn't directly apply to you?
There's work that doesn't directly apply to me.
Yeah, like I mean, some people use referral networks for that.
Mm-hmm.
Some people, you mentioned you have a core network group that you attend regularly. Didn't know if there's,
I see, like in terms of referring other professionals.
Sure.
Yeah, I think that's probably a part of my business that could do a lot better at systematizing. I think it's just more of a verbal thing, where I make it known that, consider me a resource, and things tend to just organically pop up because a lot of people already have different professionals working for them. So I don't want to just start dumping people on them. But a lot of times people will ask, do you have an attorney that can help me with the closing?
Sure.
Can you refer me to a lender, from a buyer's perspective? Can you introduce me to a lender so I can talk about financing? Those are pretty common ones that I get for referrals. I would like to systematize that more, maybe have a dedicated page, start spotlighting partners in some of my emails that go out. So not only promote what I'm doing, but promote a product or service of other people as well. And so that's something that I've been talking about with different people, so kind of cross promotion together.
Mm-hmm. No, that makes sense. Definitely. So when you look at, what you do here, right, as a process, is there a piece of the process you enjoy more than others? So, I mean, I know there's helping the business owner get to the point of sale. There's the point of due diligence in a deal, things of that nature. Is there a certain aspect of the process you enjoy more than others?
Yeah, I think the part I really enjoy is the early stages of getting to know the seller and getting to know the business.
Hmm.
I think part of what attracted me to this industry to begin with is I'm just passionate about entrepreneurship in general. I
Hmm.
don't care if you own a machine shop or a salon or a hot dog stand. I could sit down and geek out with you about business, you know.
Absolutely.
So I think that's my favorite part, is really the beginning stages of saying, all right, let's open the hood and see what you got here, and just asking about the business model. Tell me about your business model. That's how it starts. You know, I,
Discovery phase.
I don't ask them about, tell me about your business. I specifically ask them about their business model. And I think
Sure.
it triggers a different mindset. It gets them thinking about point A, point B, point C. And I love that, just kind of learning how the business works from beginning to end, because they're all pretty different.
Absolutely. Discovery is fun, definitely.
Hmm.
You and I have talked before. Do you have any books about the business that you're in, or just books that impacted you in getting into the business that you would recommend to people?
Absolutely. One of the most impactful books was Built to Sell
Okay.
by John Warra Willows. And he's actually the founder of the Value Builder system, but this is something he wrote before then. He has started and sold several companies of his own.
Hmm.
And he wrote a book called Built to Sell. And it's all about, it's told from more of a perspective of a story
Okay.
versus a how-to book. So it's a little, it reads kind of like a fiction, very entertaining, and it's a quick read. But the whole book is all about what makes a sellable business.
Sure.
So just to kind of give you a quick summary, Alex Stapleton, who's the protagonist of the book, he has an advertising agency, and he
Mhm.
decides he wants to sell, but he realizes he is chasing so many different things in his business. It's hard to define what his business is, and he's kind of trapped in the middle of it. So it's
Sure.
hard to even imagine turning it over to somebody else.
Right.
So he goes through the process in this book of actually taking an advertising agency that's always doing these statements of work for different people. He turns his business into a logo business. And he's got kind of a flat fee, systematizes his approach. He really distills who his customers are. And it goes through the process of turning his business into a scalable business that can run without him
Mhm.
and become more valuable in the process. From beginning to end, it gives a very entertaining account of how this whole process works.
Sure. I really love those books that teach through the story, right? So
Mhm.
everything I learned about manufacturing, I learned in Joe's Garage is like another one, right? That's one that kind of
Oh,
teaches the basics of manufacturing. And also back to the systematize and process piece. I actually posted something on LinkedIn earlier this week. The quote was from William Edwards Deming, the godfather of quality, right? And it was, if you can't define what you do as a process, you don't know what you're doing. And
hmm.
it's direct, but it hurts, but it's true. I think everything can be boiled down to process, right?
That's really interesting, because something I've been thinking about lately is, there was a quote, I can't remember where it was from, but the idea was we shouldn't necessarily be pursuing um, goals or results necessarily. We should be focusing on process, because as
Yes,
long as we're focusing on doing the right process, results and everything else will just follow. I thought there
absolutely.
was something interesting about that.
You get that outline down. Now you can see areas to improve, and you can see the value add and the non-value add areas.
Right.
Defining process is the first step to really making some huge strides, I think.
Absolutely. Yeah,
Uh,
that's hard to do.
So let me ask you about ExitAdvisor. Is your family involved with this at all, or is it just you're the guy?
Just me. No, no family, except, early on I'd get my nephews involved. I had a little assembly line of putting postcards together, slapping labels and stamps on there. That was about 10 years ago, though.
That makes sense. I like to engage my wife and my daughter in our businesses for, things that require a lot of that minor labor, I'd say.
Yeah, if we
Um,
didn't have 3-year-old twins, I'd probably rope my wife in somehow.
Definitely. Yeah, she's got her hands full. So what is the biggest challenge you faced starting ExitAdvisor?
Yeah, the biggest challenge is probably sort of the starting over because the sales cycle is so slow in business brokerage. There was a period where there was a big dip, and kind of the pipeline that was in a different entity, so to speak. It never really transitions smoothly. So that was a challenge for me in the beginning.
Okay.
Uh, but fortunately, I was able to time it right around the time the twins were born. So I took kind of a sabbatical.
Okay.
So I was able to kind of take my time doing that.
That's pretty valuable to take a step back, right? Kind
Mhm.
of separate yourself from what you're doing and then really kind of look at things with like a clear new view, right?
Very much so, because I had a lot of time to reflect on it and had a lot of ideas on what I wanted to do differently.
Hmm.
And got a couple of approaches to how I'm doing things that I feel are kind of new.
Sure. Kudos to you for doing that. That takes a lot of maturity and a lot of self-awareness to do that, to pull away and do that.
Oh, thank you.
So when COVID hit, I mean March 2020, we're a little over a year now past that point. How did that impact your business?
It's a good question. It was hard to say at first because a lot of people were just nervous and
Hmm.
didn't want to make any decisions. So the people that were on the fence definitely stayed on the fence. And it just felt like more people were just on the fence, especially in the beginning,
Sure.
for 6 months after the lockdown started. I had some active clients at the time, some of which did fine.
Hmm.
Um, so a machine shop, for example, it didn't really impact them.
Right.
They just open the open the doors and get the airflow going.
Right.
Had a salon though on the north side where they closed down and didn't even reopen.
Oh.
It devastated them.
Hmm.
You know, it was different because it seemed to help some businesses in a way. Some businesses had banner years,
Yeah.
and then some businesses they crushed them immediately.
Yeah.
So I think in terms of the inventory that I had that I was working on, it definitely hurt some of those businesses because it closed them down for a while. So anything that was kind of health and beauty related, especially,
Hmm.
massage salons where they're, very closely working. I mean, some of those businesses were closed down for a while and
Yeah.
either didn't reopen or they're still recovering because some of their employees left.
Hmm.
And now that's the challenge that everything's starting to pick up steam is it's hard to get labor because some people have just dropped out of the labor force or they've moved to other markets or they're still trying to get childcare and they can't leave the house yet.
Yeah.
It's a challenge right now.
I think that's really interesting. When I looked at all the different verticals, right, impacted by COVID in different ways, it's to your point, the kind of entertainment industry or the restaurant business, those businesses took a severe hit. I mean, some of
Hmm.
them are reporting 30% unemployment rates relative to that industry, but there's other verticals that people said, oh, they're going to be crushed. Like, I mean, I deal with auto dealers. And auto dealers, everybody's like, oh, the sales are going to be down. And they were, right? New car sales, used car sales were down, but people didn't account that there's still this piece of the business on service and repair. And when
Mm.
people drove to that, because people were hanging on their cars longer, they just, the revenues and the profits skyrocketed. It
Hmm.
was pretty amazing, or not revenues, but the profit percentage on what they were doing actually skyrocketed.
That's
So, I
true.
mean, they thrived in that environment. And same thing like machine shops. Machine shops and manufacturing, they only experienced like about a 3.4%, hit in unemployment. So
Hmm.
it really depended what vertical market you were operating in. And I think what it really stressed coming out of COVID is look at your clients and see how diverse you are, right? Because the diversity would help, I guess, life proof or bulletproof your business in that sense.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Makes sense. Even if, if you're a machine shop, but your end market is restaurants,
Yeah,
or, yeah, you could suffer. But if you're diversified, no, that's a good point.
yeah, definitely. Um, so passion, determination, both very powerful motivators. I see that you have those for the business you're in, and I think that you know a lot of my friends who are in entrepreneurship and their own business owner have those types of attributes. What attributes do you feel made you most successful aside from passion and determination?
I think a big one is candor, just the ability to have an earnest conversation with someone about the sale and the value of their business in
Hmm.
particular. It's hard to tell a business owner that they have a very inflated view of the value of their business.
Sure.
Um, so being able to tell them that and also convey that I'm not trying to insult them. I'm
Right.
telling them because I don't want to waste their time and I don't want to waste my time.
Right.
And I want to give them good advice,
Sure.
because a
Well, that
lot
totally
of
makes sense.
people will waste their time going to market thinking they can get a certain amount and they get no activity, or they're just not taken seriously. And that can be avoided if someone was just candid enough to tell them the truth.
Yeah. Takes fortitude to do that, definitely. Um, Changing gears a little bit.
Mhm.
Where do you see ExitAdvisor in 3 to 5 years?
Yeah, I think where I see it is kind of two parts. I would like to grow the grow the brokerage side of the business and have some other brokers working with me.
Okay.
Um, and then the other side of the business is valuation. So I've formalized a valuation process, and I also a subscription valuation. So what I've found is that a lot of business owners at the beginning of the year, they have a lot of expenses and memberships and subscriptions due, right?
Hmm.
So take the cost of a valuation and spread it out over a year
Hmm.
and have it built in to where it's more of a living valuation. It shouldn't be something that you just do one time and forget about it. Why not have it be something that is constantly updating? Every month, it's giving you some kind of update specific to the industry or your market. And every year, when you get that new year-end filing and your tax returns, we update the valuation. And I had mentioned something about a sellability score.
Right.
Uh, I have it to where whenever you're implementing new processes or your financials are changing, something significant that you're implementing to your business, we can update that score to reflect the change you're making to your business in real time and see how it's affecting your business.
That's really cool.
So that's a scalable part of my business where I
Right.
figured out, okay, I do, what are the things I'm doing for people besides brokerage? Because
Right.
I got to get to the point where I'm not just chasing commissions.
Right.
And so there's valuations. But a lot of times I was just giving valuations away for free on the front end to try to get people's attention. But I realized I was just spending so much time giving away stuff to people that might not necessarily work with me. So I had to figure out how to strike a balance there where I could still give something of value without giving them a full valuation. So that's how it evolved into this, where um, I could see this growing into something where I have a team of people that can help
Yeah.
do the valuation, because it doesn't rely on me to do it.
Hmm.
So I have other people that help me do the data entry and putting together the valuation, and then my role is
Sure.
really check everything for quality and then deliver it to the client. But that's a really scalable part of my business outside of the brokerage. So 3 to 5 years, I'd like to see that grow into its own business.
I love that. I love how you're approaching it from the scalability viewpoint. I mean, I think a lot of business owners don't do that.
Hmm.
I love that you're talking about this organic valuation too, where as it changes over time, it can be updated. Because you're right, a lot of people do it. It's a one-time plant the flag type process, and then next time they have to go through it, or for whatever reason, they have to totally recreate the wheel.
Mhm.
So that's very forward thinking on your part. Let me ask you, for people listening to the podcast here, what can they do, or how can they help you realize those goals, or what can they do to help ExitAdvisor gain traction and achieve that 3 to 5 year goal?
Sure. I think just checking out the website for starters, and you'll be able to see the valuation, my product on there, and check it out. If you know other business owners, forward them the link, tell them about it, because the way I look at it is all of us as business owners, we should be thinking about how sellable our business is, whether we want to sell or not,
Right.
because life happens.
Yes.
And things unexpectedly come up. And frankly, most of the people that call me that are thinking about selling their business and that have already made up their mind, it's because something unexpected happened. They got sick. Something happened to a spouse. Maybe the operator died. Now the kids are scrambling to figure out how to manage things. But even if you know you don't want to sell as your end goal, the same things that are going to make a business sellable are going to make the same things that make your business easy to transition to your children or key employees. So some people don't want to sell the business. They want to maintain it. They want to become the chairman and maybe have other people take over the day-to-day role. So they're the same goals. And if people are, this is a tool that can help them head in that right direction, because every month they're getting some kind of update that, one, it keeps it top of mind, the sort of strategy, the exit strategy. And then two, it gives them some concrete, actionable steps that they can take, and tools to help them identify ways they can increase value.
I think those are some extremely important things you pointed out there, because thinking about the life happens. We're always planning for this ideal of, hey, I'm going to retire when I'm X age. I'll sell the company. I'll do this or do that. But things in life happen, unexpected events. And having an accurate business evaluation on hand to drive your estate and will process, even, right? So that your kids, your family, if you're the only breadwinner and it's through this business and something happens to you and you're no longer there, are your loved ones provided for? That is a great point that I think a lot of business owners should really consider, because life happens. It always does, right? I've encountered that a couple times here recently in conversations with other people who just dealing with their children or special needs children, like that is like the whole point of guardianship. So this forward thinking of just life planning in general. And if anything, I think COVID has shown us is that unexpected things are going to happen, period, right? So let's bulletproof and life-proof everything so that we are ready for these events.
Absolutely.
Definitely. There's some unique offerings you talked about there. I mean, as far as people look at, when should I get involved in this process? And I always tell people, when you start a business, you should have some idea in mind of how far you're going to carry it or what your exit strategy is. So it's probably, there's probably a point where, yes, you start up the business and there's a little bit of dwell time before, but if you are a profitable business and you've been running for at least a year or two, I think that's a great time to start thinking exit strategy.
Sure. And it doesn't have to take a lot of detail. It can be something as simple as figuring out what is the likely exit strategy for you, because a lot of people just think there's only one way to exit a business. You just sell it and right off into the sunset. But in reality, there's about 6 or 7 ways to exit a business. So I had mentioned an ebook that you can get on my website. It's called the Exit Checklist.
Okay.
And I'm planning on doing some webinars and workshops around this too as well. So at some point at the end of May, there'll be one. So if anybody hearing this is interested in attending that, it'll be basically just a webinar that talks about this ebook that you can get for free on my site, called the Exit Checklist. And this is really an exercise designed for owners to go through, answer some questions, and it gets them thinking about why they might want to sell. And why, whether it be now or in the future. And then based on the why you want to sell, it's going to help you line that up with how you should sell. So for example, if you know that you truly want to sell the business so you can get that capital and fund your retirement, then yes, you might want to just sell the business outright. But you might also consider a recapitalization, which is where you sell part of the business today, like kind of like the stock sale we were talking about earlier. You
Sure.
stay on and help run it for 6 months to 3 years to 5 years with the idea that you'll sell the rest of the company at another point. And maybe between the first sale and the second sale, the company will have grown in value, and that second exit will actually be worth more than the entire exit altogether. So that right there is an example. There's two potential exits you can think about. One could be, well, I don't want to sell. I want my kids to take over. Okay, so you want to be thinking about the chairman role, because maybe you'll turn the business over to the kids gradually and still be involved in the strategic decisions for a few years.
Absolutely.
So that's a good way to start thinking about why you want to exit. And this will give you some ideas for how. So it's a perfect way to integrate it into your business plan, is what the likely exit would be if some of these contingencies came up.
So you said end of May that webinar is going to be, roughly.
Yeah.
How would people find out? Is it going to be posted on social media, LinkedIn, website?
Yeah, I'll post it on my site and then LinkedIn, and I have a page on Facebook, but LinkedIn is kind of where most people that follow me are connected with. So social media, and on my site, I'll be promoting it soon.
So if people want to learn more and keep engaged with you, because, selling their business or exit strategy is starting to come to the forefront of their mind, what's the best way for them to keep in touch and engage with you? You mentioned LinkedIn, so I imagine, that's a great way. We'll post that at the end of the podcast. Do you want them to email you? Is there a newsletter? Could you go into that a little bit?
Yeah, I think LinkedIn's a good way to follow what I'm posting. Usually, at least once a month, I'll be posting some kind of tip on maximizing business value. If you go to my site and sign up or opt in, like for that ebook, for example, it'll opt you into my list. And I'll send out a monthly cartoon and tip for maximizing value. They're little single frame cartoons that are kind of funny that business owners will get a little chuckle out of, because we can all relate. And then it'll be a little quick blurb. It's just a little something to think about for exit planning and maximizing the value of business. So that's kind of a thing I've sent out once a month just to keep in touch with people. And then I've got some other things that I send out to other lists that people want to opt into that all have to do with maximizing value and sellability and things like that. Perfect.
Thank you so much, Jason, for taking time to share your experience, be on the podcast, educate us a little bit about ExitAdvisor. It's always a pleasure. I enjoy our conversations. I'm anxious to see what the future holds for you. But before we sign off, any parting words or words of advice for entrepreneurs, new business owners?
Yeah, I appreciate that. And thanks for having me. It was my pleasure. I would say just the parting advice is don't wait till the last minute to think about strategy. It's always good to start, at least 2 to 3 years. If you know that you've got an exit on the horizon, 2 to 3 years is a good time to really start.
Definitely. Jason, thank you again. To our listeners, be well, be safe, and be productive. Thank you for joining the podcast. If you'd like to reach out to Jason and learn more about ExitAdvisor, you can reach him on LinkedIn under Jason Lee Pittman. You can also go to the contact form at ExitAdvisor.com. Additional links discussed during the podcast are below, like the ExitAdvisor website, which is located at www.exit-advisor.com. You can also check out the same site under Business Sellability Assessment for some freebies. You can also find the book Built to Sell that Jason mentioned by John Warra Willows at the link below. If you want to recommend somebody to appear on the podcast as a guest, please email us at info@opsqc.com. If you're interested in sponsoring a podcast, please reach out to us at the same email. We'd love to have your support.